Welcome back to another episode of the Supply Chainy Podcast. I am your host, Nathan Chaney, and today we've got a heck of a story to talk about of a really varied career, and to me, I think really impressive, and also a bit of an entrepreneur who's done a couple of things and is working on something cool called Stock. But who we're talking to here is Abby, who is from Chicago, and I was just in Chicago a couple of weeks ago, and I feel dumb for not realizing that. Maybe we could have met in person, but hey, it's better late or remote than never, I guess. So, Abby, welcome to the podcast. And can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, thank you for having me, Nathan. I'm excited to be on the Supply Chain Podcast. Looks like you have been doing some recent episodes with some of the people who are near and dear to my heart, like Flexport, a great team over there. So looking forward to this episode and many more episodes from you over at Supply Chainy. So as you mentioned,
sure.
I am located in Chicago. Next time you're in town, we should definitely get together. I saw that you were at a conference and I was thinking about reaching out, but knew you would probably be pretty busy, have your hands full. So yeah, located in Chicago. I was born and raised here, and now back home. I spent some time in Southern California and in Nashville, which we'll get to, but been back home in Chicago for about a year now and really enjoying being back around family. So I went to school at Indiana University and I got my degree in supply chain, operations management, and international business. And it's interesting because, when you're a young kid, you're thinking about, oh, do I want to be a veterinarian or a police officer? And I wasn't too sure what I wanted to be, but I knew I wanted to be in business, in some function or form of business. Both my parents were in business and I was competitive as a young child, played sports, and just really liked that space. And so when I went to school, I started obviously freshman year taking gen ed classes and not quite sure where I wanted to land. But Indiana University offers a really awesome sophomore or junior year curriculum called I-Core, which is integrated curriculum, where they mandate you to take courses across each of the different business majors to allow you to be exposed to those majors and help you figure out which degree you were going to pursue. And so I started taking I-Core sophomore year, and I said, okay, for sure, not finance, not accounting. I don't want to do marketing. And ironically enough, and we'll again get to it later when we talk about stock, I said, no, I don't want to do entrepreneurship. But when I started taking the operations classes, I really fell in love with the problem solving side of it. It was this massive puzzle piece that we were fitting into the overall puzzle, and I was exposed to different areas of the supply chain, manufacturing, transportation, warehousing, all of the Lean Six Sigma principles. And so it was that semester that I decided, okay, operations is going to be it. I did a couple of different internships throughout the college years, specifically Rolls-Royce, which a lot of people would think is the car. It's not. I was working in the defense sector, supporting them with their partnerships with Boeing and a few others. And that was really my first exposure to warehousing. And so then senior year, when I was looking at, what am I going to do after college? I was interviewing with Target and with ArcelorMittal, with Anheuser-Busch and DHL, some of the very popular names in supply chain when you're coming out of college. They have a lot of the college programs, the leadership and immersion programs. And I ended up going with DHL. So I moved from Bloomington, Indiana, out to Southern California, right in the heart of the Inland Empire, where everybody knows you can throw a rock and hit 15 different warehouses. And I started in the automotive sector with DHL in Moreno Valley at the Federal Mogul facility as a supervisor. So I spent a few years working through just the normal supervisor rotation of inbound supervisor, replenishment supervisor, outbound supervisor, and then moved over to a different DHL building, which was consumer, so office furniture and toilets. You wouldn't think it was very exciting, but we were shipping Toto toilets to the fanciest hotels and the fanciest, newest builds for celebrities in Calabasas. And so you can make anything, shiny and exciting. Left DHL and went over to Radial with some of the leadership that was above me at the time, and helped launch US distribution for Zara. So that was really my first stint in e-commerce, fast fashion, and retail. And it was very exciting, right? Zara is obviously an incredibly popular household name, and we were overseeing half of their supply chain here in the US, and it was a new building, and it was just a really fun, exciting challenge to look at how to improve Zara's supply chain. Spent a lot of time at Zara with Radial, but then ultimately went over to Uniqlo, before I left Radial, I spent some time at the SKIMS account in Chicago as well, launching SKIMS for Kim and Kanye. Very interesting stories, right? Kanye was insistent on having his distribution out of Chicago or the suburbs in Bolingbrook, and very interesting stories there. But came back to Southern California and left Radial for an opportunity at Geodis, where I was overseeing the Uniqlo account in Paris, California. And then Geodis also offered me an opportunity to move to Nashville and be the director of operations. 27 years old, 7 months pregnant with my youngest child, and in the middle of the pandemic, we picked up and moved from Southern California out to Nashville, and I oversaw one of Apple's multiple buildings here in the U.S. They had about 3.3 million square feet of warehousing with Geodis alone, and had other 3PL providers as well. So that was everything from their retail business, replenishing all of their brick and mortar stores, to all of their reseller business with Walmart or Best Buy, Verizon Wireless, or AT&T, all of their e-commerce distribution and their returns management, their RMA, was all in one building there in Nashville. So I spent a few years there, but then really wanted to challenge myself in terms of the industry in general, right? And so at that point, I was probably 6 or 7 years into my career out of college and had kind of gotten an understanding of the landscape. There are these massive 3PL legacy giants, industry standard with Geodis and DHL and Radial, XPO and NFI, Kuehne Nagel. And then you had all of these mom and pop 3PLs who are really personable, truly caring, high quality, great pricing, but might not have all of the nodes across the US that merchants may need, might not have the tech stack that merchants may need. And then most merchants couldn't get in with the largest 3PLs, right? You had to be an Apple or a Zara or a SKIMS to be able to even be looked at by a Geodis or a Radial. And so there were all these new players coming into the market, the ShipMonks, the Deliverrs, the stores, and the Flex. And so I said, okay, I want to see what these guys are up to, right? Like what is the problem that they're trying to solve? And so I left Geodis in 2021 and went over to work at Deliverr alongside Harish, the CEO and founder of Deliverr. And what was happening at the time was Deliverr was, a 4PL essentially, and they had partnerships with 30 plus 3PLs across the US who were running their distribution on a contractual basis for the merchants. And Deliverr was phenomenal at e-commerce distribution, right? And they had thousands of merchants who were using them for e-commerce. One of two things either happens. The brand grows itself, right? They become no longer a small or medium brand, but a large enterprise brand. Think of logos like Uni or Brooklinen, right? They start off small, but then they're household names. Or Deliverr gets so large as a name itself that they start attracting higher profile clients, right? Hey Dude Shoes, which is now a company of Crocs, right? And those merchants then need more than just e-commerce fulfillment. They need returns. They need subscription. They need drop shipping. They need middle mile freight. They need B2B. They need overflow pallet in, pallet out, cross-docking and storage, etc. So Harish was faced with this challenge of how do I take what I do really well in this e-commerce space for these merchants and grow that to have a suite of offerings for all merchants of any size who may need different types of fulfillment and distribution or different types of solutions. And so that's what I spent my time at Deliverr doing, is building out our reserve storage program, our B2B program, our prep, which is like VAS, FBA prep, kitting, special projects, and our returns program. Saw Deliverr through the acquisition to Shopify, spent a year at Shopify, and then went over to Flexport. Of course, that's just a ton of turmoil between being at Deliverr and going through an acquisition, and then being at Shopify and going through another acquisition. And so I picked up the phone and I called ShipMonk and I said, hey, I love what I do. I love fulfillment. I love operations. I love building out new service offerings or bringing service offerings up to industry standard. And I would love to come over and help ShipMonk if they need any help. And they said, yeah, of course, we have a B2B offering. And we're always interested in making it better for our merchants. And so that's when I came over as Senior Director of Wholesale for ShipMonk. So that's kind of the traditional career, right? But as
No,
anyone
I
who
would say
loves
that
what
was
they
not
do,
traditional. That sounded like a very, very high growth, quick moving, lots of exposure early on in your career. That was not traditional career, but continue.
yeah, definitely high growth. Yes. It gets crazier though, right? So maybe in my world it's traditional because we're about to throw the whole wrench in the game, right? So with anyone who loves their job and what they're doing, they often are constantly thinking of like ways to improve it, or they're pulling out things in the industry that they see as gaps and all of this. And so even from the first day at our Zara site way back in 2017, I was thinking, okay, there's a gap in how brands and 3PLs manage donations. If we go through some of the numbers, right, $163 billion worth of inventory gets thrown out every single year. Perfectly good inventory that's not been through the reverse logistics cycle, inventory that has never been sold, never been touched, and has literally been manufactured, shipped overseas, and now sitting in a warehouse. There are 20,000 3PLs in the US that are fulfilling for over 2 million brands that are on Shopify or Amazon. Of those 2 million brands, unfortunately, about 10% of them will make it long term, right? Will become a household name, will be around for more than 10 plus years, and will grow consistently year over year. And so the 90% of the brands that don't make it, because in all honesty, business is hard, and being a D2C founder would be, in my opinion, incredibly hard. I've never done it before, but I can only imagine. And so what happens to the 90% of the brands that close up shop? They end up terminating their agreement with their 3PL, and any inventory that they've manufactured is now owned by the 3PL, right? If they stop paying their bills or they don't come to collect their inventory, that inventory sits with their 3PL. And so again, being at Zara, at SKIMS, Uniqlo, Apple, and then in this SMB mid-market space, I had seen time and time again where there were these instances where you have this inventory in the warehouse and we don't want to throw it into a landfill, right? Like it hurts our hearts to throw it into a landfill. And so we do everything possible to keep it out of the landfill. The shipping clerk or our fastest packer, they have a cousin or an uncle that works at Salvation Army, and they can make a call to their local church and see if the inventory could be of use for anybody. But it's incredibly fragmented, right? Incredibly segmented, and there's no really strong technology or marketplace or connection around the 3PLs who have the inventory or the brands who have excess and obsolete inventory and the nonprofit world. There are hundreds of thousands of nonprofits in the US who have open arms and would receive these goods with smiles on their faces. And so, like I said, my first interaction was at Zara, and I saw it all the way through. And we were seeing it more and more and more in the Deliverr world, in the Flexport world, in the ShipMonk world, just because the brands are so much smaller and the turnover is much higher of these brands. And so what ended up happening is at ShipMonk, I became kind of the go-to person. Abby has this network of nonprofits. She can help us move this inventory out of our facilities. And so that's how Stock was born. Stock is a private marketplace for 3PLs and brands to list excess and obsolete inventory, and for nonprofits to then shop that inventory. They obviously receive the inventory for free. 90% of the nonprofits will pay for freight to move the inventory out of the 3PL's network and into their communities. And they also provide the tax write-off to the 3PL and the brand at 100% of retail or fair market value of the goods. So it's really like a win-win-win-win, right? The 3PL gets the space back in their warehouse to generate more revenue. The inventory stays out of the landfill and goes into underserved communities. The nonprofit is providing the full tax write-off to the 3PL, and in most cases, they're paying for the freight. Again, it's good for everybody. It's good for the planet. So Stock has been facilitating these donations and building up this marketplace of inventory that otherwise would have been disposed of. So for instance, we did a donation of raincoats and umbrellas, right? And that goes into a Goodwill in central Indiana who actually can redistribute that out to their community if their community is in need. The other thing too is a lot of the nonprofits will end up reselling at a reduced rate within their thrift store network or their network in general, just to increase the proceeds that come from that inventory, which is also perfectly fine, right? So whoever's buying it is using it. The financial proceeds of the sale are going back to the nonprofit. who is then supporting their communities with that money. We've seen donations like, oh, I have a pallet of Dr. Pepper syrup, 180 gallons of Dr. Pepper. I'm going to just throw it in the garbage if I can't find something. We find a local homeless shelter. There was one called Austin House in Dallas, Fort Worth area that we were able to connect that 3PL with and say, hey, if you're just going to throw this out, there's a homeless shelter down the road that has fountain machines that would love to use this, right? And so that's really the whole concept, is like this localized community and network of inventory that's flowing from warehouses that would otherwise throw it out into communities that can utilize it. Because the other thing too that we see at the corporate level is a lot of times companies like, Ace Hardware or Home Depot may have one nonprofit that they partner with, like Ronald McDonald's House or Children's Miracle Network. And at some point, the inventory that they're providing to that nonprofit isn't of use to that nonprofit, but it could be of use to some other nonprofit, like Habitat for Humanity or anything, right? And so it's like this matchmaking service of what category of goods do I have and what nonprofit needs that specific category of goods. For instance, right now we are doing a donation of 84,000 units of pet supplies, harnesses and dog toys and poop bags and, dog bowls and all of these different things. And normally the company that would donate it would say like, yeah, sure, we have like donation nonprofit partners like Ronald McDonald House, but they don't need the pet supplies, right? Like that's not a category that they work in. And so we're working to find, we actually have 3 dog shelters and animal rescues in our network that can use that inventory.
Yeah. Let's back up a bit to the school days, and you kind of threw yourself, you teed yourself up for the question about entrepreneurship and how you took that course or like sort of, in college and realized that wasn't quite for me. And then you're like, yeah, we'll put a bookmark in it. So how has that journey been to play entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's a really awesome question. I'm glad that you asked because like I said, I never thought I would be an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs have successfully made it look like it is the hardest job in the world, and it is, right? It genuinely is. So like nothing looked appetizing about like, oh, I want to go wear literally every single hat. I want to go out into the world and have everybody say, are they going to be able to do it? Is this something that's going to be successful? Like be criticized all the time and be pushed. But like to your point, it was almost like I couldn't not be an entrepreneur in the sense that the problem that needed to be solved was right in front of me, and it was like this is not too easy, but like if I don't, like I will always regret not attempting to do it, right? And so I think my first step, truly, when Stock was born, the first thing I did was reach out to somebody who I trusted, who I had worked with in the past, who I wanted to bounce ideas off of. He's an engineer. He's in Croatia. He worked with me at Deliverr, at Flexport, at Shopify, and I called him on WhatsApp and I was like, okay, like tell me if I'm crazy or not, right? Like, is this something I should pursue? Is this something you think we could build a business off of? And he was the one who gave me the confidence to say like, okay, you can do this. And this is a really awesome idea. And then I started working with him on the MVP of Stock, right? Like we were just playing around in alpha and we were building a marketplace and saying like, okay, what would this look like? And what fields would we need? And how would it flow? And is this something people would use? And then at that time, we were still doing donations. It was all through email, right? So I was working with the nonprofits and the 3PLs, and it was literally just all through email. The 3PLs would email me, here's the inventory that we have, and I would pass it along to the nonprofits as we were building the platform. And then I just picked up, as I went into different functional areas of entrepreneurship, hey, I needed a P&L. I needed to build out a pricing model. I needed to look at, is this business viable financially? I reached out to who I trusted most in that finance sector, right? And I said, okay, I need your help and I need advice in this space. And it came to marketing and branding. And it was like, do I need a pitch deck? Do I want to get investors? Do I need a LinkedIn page? Do I need a website? Do I need a logo? So I reached out to someone in marketing who I trusted and respected and looked up to. And all of them gave me business advice and their functional area expertise advice. So that was what made me feel like, okay, I am capable. This is possible. I could pursue this. And here we are.
It's kind of that concept of, it takes a village sort of thing, that it's, even though you might have this solo entrepreneur that looks like they cobbled this thing together in their basement, in reality, they were doing what you're doing, right? You've got to call on all those resources that are specialists and that are experts in their domain, and try to put all their inputs and their expertise into your baby that you're trying to grow. Speaking of which, being kind of a newer mother and doing this venture and holding a day job, any comments on that? You got any pro tips?
Yeah, no, and I also appreciate that question because I think we don't see a lot of women in the industry as leaders, or just in maybe the last 20, 15 years, it's getting a lot more attention. They're there, right? They exist in
Right.
Geodis and in DHL and in all of these large companies. They're just not in the spotlight as much as they should be. But then there's that also second layer of motherhood in corporate America, motherhood in entrepreneurship,
Yeah.
motherhood in supply chain. And so, you know, I think it's incredibly important in my role for a couple different reasons. One, in supply chain in general, I don't know the exact statistics on this, but just from my experience, a lot of the hourly employees within the warehouses are mothers, are grandmothers, are college students who are women who are helping to support their family or supporting themselves, and who are working within the hourly employee sector of the supply chain. And I think them seeing women in leadership roles, and when they're used to seeing men within the warehouse in leadership roles, it can be incredibly empowering, right? And so it's incredibly important for me as a woman to be on the front lines and to be working alongside some of the, not only like the younger generation, like women coming out of college and into supply chain from a corporate perspective, but the hourly employees who are also the ones who are actually moving the widgets, the ones who are actually shipping the orders, who are packing, who are gift wrapping, who are, lifting boxes, who are picking orders, who are doing putaways. And so I think we want to see representation across all levels of employment and all experience levels and age in terms of experience within the industry as well. It's not easy, right? It's not easy. I wear many hats, which maybe I was born to be an entrepreneur now, but wear many hats in terms of like being a mom at home and doing school drop off every day, but then getting on calls and making sure that certain functions of the business are prepared for peak Black Friday, Cyber Monday, or new merchant launches, or warehouse, teardowns and launches. And it's definitely something that you have to learn to switch on and off different styles of communication, different styles of management, different ways that you empathize and that you interact with different people, including the kids. And so it's challenging, but it's also incredibly empowering, right? It's like, if I can do it, anyone can do it. I have kids at home, I work a full-time job, and I'm building something on the side. It is possible if you have the right village and if you prioritize the right things.
I appreciate that. I've had a student or two, females that have asked me, kind of asked me some questions career related, and they've said, Nathan, I don't see very many women in supply chain and logistics. Is this something that I should do? And I'm like, yes, you totally should. They are there. You might not see them as much as you see all the guys running around, but yes, they're there. You got it. There's networks. There's like what, Sarah Barnes Humphrey's doing. Like there's a lot of like energy there, but it's just not as prominent and out front. And obviously there's a wave. It's building up. Momentum is growing. Like things are going in the right direction. But the fact that I've even had that question asked to me multiple times is actually kind of bewildering, right?
And it's all the more reason. It's like, if you don't see it, then you should join, because you should be helping the cause of bringing it to light, right? I think, yeah, like it is there. Geodis has a phenomenal women's network and amazing female leaders. Supply and demand chain executive does a phenomenal job of highlighting all of the women in supply chain every single year. And they have a women's conference in November down in Atlanta. And it's just like, it's just continuing to push that narrative out that we do exist. It seems like such a dirty old industry in terms of like supply chain and warehouse. It's dark, it's dim, it's dusty, it's heavy, it's ocean freight, right? Like none of that is glamorous, but it's actually like an incredible space for women who are type A personalities, who are competitive, who do have like love a good to-do list and love to put puzzles together. It's like it's a phenomenal space for women to thrive in general.
Yeah, I like it. Could we talk a little bit about, since you've had that, if you want to say the big guys experience at DHL and Geodis and those sort of folks, and you've kind of been finding yourself on the more boutique startup, different size. And I've been seeing a lot of people just starting up lot of 3PLs like go grab 20,000 square feet and they say they specialize in e-commerce fulfillment. And I mean, it's like, it's what I've realized is it feels like the new craft brewery movement
Yes.
where you've got Budweiser and the big guys, and you've got this like all these craft breweries coming up. And I've been commenting on this and I've been picking up on it. Maybe I'm late to observe this, but you are bridging that gap. Like you identified it a while ago of you've got the traditional folks that can land the really big institutional enterprise size sort of clients and brands, and then you've got all these like fun, really cultured like ping pong tables and beer on Fridays at 5 and that sort of like fun places. What's your thoughts? Can you give some commentary on like why there's this maybe like this growth of the stores and the I guess the Shopify fulfillment, the specialization, and maybe what you're doing at ShipMonk?
Yeah, 100%. And that's like a really good analogy. I've never heard it put that way, and that clicks very much in terms of it
Yeah.
being a craft brewery scene. I think it's honestly like it's the downstream effect of e-commerce and D2C in general, right? So it's like, okay, e-com was taking off already. COVID hits and it spikes and it goes absolutely bonkers. Everybody has access now to build a Shopify store, to be an entrepreneur in the D2C space, to have product manufactured overseas and shipped over here to the US, and they can sell it, right? And to your point, to my point earlier, you have to be Kraft or Johnson and Johnson or Unilever or Scott's Lawn to be able to get in with any of the Geodises. And so all of these D2C brands were outgrowing their garages or their basements, and they were entering into that mid-market range,
Mm-hmm.
and they had nowhere to go. And so 5 to 10 years later, you now see, okay, everybody recognized that they had nowhere to go 5 or 10 years ago, and now they're all coming to market with their mom and pops saying that, okay, we can offer you the fulfillment and all the service providing that you needed in our space, right? At your size, we'll meet you where you're at.
Yeah.
What I think is interesting too, and what I just saw on LinkedIn today is like, now what are we seeing? We're seeing a ton of companies. I think I've seen 4 just in the last year come to market with 3PL matchmaking services, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
there's now
Yep.
so many 3PLs.
Yep.
It's like, okay, now there's so many beers on the market. Which one do I like? Right? And it's
Yep.
like now there's so many 3PLs. It's like you're overwhelmed. And now we need this matchmaking service for 3PLs. And before it was like 1 or 2, right? Matthew Hertz and Joe Spieth. And
Yeah. Yeah.
now it's
Yeah.
like there's more and more coming on, because to your point, we just see more and more 3PLs entering the scene. And there's a lot to say there too, right? I think there is a sweet spot between the larger 3PL giants and the old traditional mom and pop. Because like I said, with smaller size 3PL, you do get that hands-on love and care and attention. You get super high quality. You're not a small fish in a big pond. You're a small fish in a small pond. You get better
Yeah.
technology, but it's hard for them to reach 83% of the US population with 1 or 2 day shipping, right? They have to take down so many square feet across so many different regions to be able to do that. So now it's like, what's the trade-off? It's a hard question to ask if you're a D2C brand.
You're right. So it's the barriers to entry to starting up a 3PL are maybe at an all-time low, right? Is like with web-based WMSs and everything being subscription and being able to rent, 10,000 square feet of space in some market somewhere. And I've dabbled with it myself. Like it's crossed my mind for sure. Like I want supply chain to have its everything eventually. I'll probably do that or partner with someone who does. But yeah, because it's just like everyone's hopping on. And then, but if you think about it, if we go back to the craft brewery analogy, it's like when you got so much buzz and so much momentum and everyone's getting on, then now the big guys are going to come in and like consolidate, or like you need to start consolidating the industry. And it feels like maybe we haven't 100% started that wave yet. I don't know,
I
but
don't
do you
think
think it's
so.
inevitable? It's going to be so fractured and segmented that we're going
Yeah.
to have to, yeah, eventually.
Yeah, I do. I definitely think that it'll I don't even know if it'll be consolidated. There are a couple consolidation interactions I've run into in the last couple of weeks from certain 3PLs who are saying like, "Hey, we'll buy all the square footage and you can operate with your brand and your logo, but you're basically
Uh,
paying us for the space." And that's the start of the consolidation until everybody gets
okay.
bought out. Or if there's just like a natural decline in 3PL based off of who succeeds and who doesn't, right? I think right now we're in this space where everyone's coming out to market, but then at some point Some of them are going to close down. The capital is going to be too much, or they won't be able to convert and acquire enough merchants to support their business, and they may naturally fall off and subside, and the other ones may grow. But we'll see. Yeah, that's going to be interesting. Godspeed.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe that's where I'll enter in whenever consolidation
But
time happens.
no, but okay, when we had talked a long time ago, you can keep this in or you can cut it, but I
You're
absolutely
good.
loved your idea of like an incubator. A warehouse is an incubator that's attached to a university or a network of universities where kids like me who were doing integrated curriculum and
Right.
thought like, wow, operations is super cool, can go and work in the warehouse X amount of hours a week and really see, but that warehouse is actually fulfilling live orders for real merchants. Like that is
Hmm.
a spectacular idea. I think we'll see more of that like spin-off in how do I get creative with the warehousing solution but still provide a service to my merchant, right? Like same with stock. I mean, it's very similar thing in the sense that like getting into the supply chain industry, we don't hold any of the inventory. We don't have warehouses. We don't actually store or move physical goods. We're literally just a marketplace that connects these two worlds. But it's really a spin-off of a problem that needed to be solved. So
All right. There's two questions that I want to make sure to run by you that I try to ask everyone, and I think I would really love your insights on it. One, everything that we've talked about so far sounds like Abby just rolls in, knocks it out of the park every day, all the time. So, would love to see if you can dig into your past and find one time when you did not knock it out of the park. Kind of came in like something fell through the cracks, fell on your face, you had an epic fail type of thing. We could also call it a learning opportunity. But is there one of those that you mind sharing?
so there's definitely 100% been times in my career that I have massively failed. And please, I don't want any listener out there to think that I don't go to bed crying at least once a week, right? Life is stressful, life is real. You're not good at everything. But I remember this one instance when I was out in Southern California working on at the Zara account, and we were actually launching SKIMS in Chicago in the next few months. And so one of the leaders at Radial had said to me, "Okay, Abby, we're going to fly you out to Chicago. You're going to be there for 2 months, and you're going to help support the team on site to get the site ready, right? Get all the inventory inbounded and in stock and labeled correctly, and get ready for the site to go live." Because SKIMS was one
Yeah.
of those where it's like, they turn it on at 10 p.m. on a Saturday, and then it's just like all hell breaks loose and it's complete
Sure.
chaos. So I was flown out to Chicago to go support on the launch of SKIMS, and I had felt in my soul that I was tapped. They were asking me to go save the day, and I got there to the site, and I kind of came in with this attitude of like, okay, we're going to do it this way, and we're going to do it this way, and this is the right way to do it. And I wasn't well received, shockingly, by the team that was on site at the Bolingbrook facility, and they were very much like, who is this girl? And we don't want to work with her. And why does she think she's better than everybody else? And why does she have this attitude like she knows what she's doing? And I had thought, well, my boss had asked me to come out here, and I have helped in successful launches before with different teams, so I don't understand what's going on. And it took probably a week, 2 weeks for me to figure out that I was the problem, right? Like I was the one who was causing the turmoil and the heartburn across the teams. And I think from that experience, it kind of bred my mentality on like 30, 60, 90, in the sense that the first 30 days or hours or whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it, you should really be in an observing mode. And then the second 30, you should be in a teaching mode. And then in the third 30, once you hit that 90, you can go into like, okay, I'm giving the direction, and this is how we're going to build the process or build the team or look at the problem and solve the problem. And so, yeah, I mean, there's definitely times, and it's completely embarrassing. I flew back to California, and my bosses were like, "What the hell? What is wrong with you? Like, we didn't fly you
Oh
out
my
there
gosh.
to embarrass us, right? Like, we flew you out there to help, and you came in a little
Wow.
strong." And so that's definitely, it's a learning moment, right? You look back on it and
Yeah.
you're like, yeah, I apologize and I'm sorry for being a little extra, but my signals were crossed.
Yeah. Wow. I really appreciate you sharing that. Again, more than likely that half the people that are listening to this podcast have had a similar experience probably. So appreciate you going out on a limb and sharing that. I probably have done that a couple of times myself. Also, the other question that I try to ask everyone, and it'll kind of maybe let it be the last one here, is if you were going to go back to yourself back in Indiana and give yourself some advice as a student that would help you to be, where you are today or beyond where you are today, or have gotten to where you are more easily or with less stress, what's some of that advice you might give your student self?
And so I inadvertently took this advice, but I would go back and give this advice to any supply chain major that is currently in college. When I was graduating and everybody was looking for jobs, everybody was so dead set on moving to a big city, New York, Chicago, LA, and having a corporate role at Kraft as a buyer or a planner or, a source procurement manager or an analyst that came out with a supply chain degree. And my recommendation is if you're coming out with a supply chain degree, start in the warehouse. Like start as a supervisor, start as an area manager, start in the warehouse, because that is not only where you will gain the best experience, but also like truly the best functional experience from your work perspective, but the best life experience because of the people who you're working with. When you're leading a shift of blue collar workers who are, some of the most intelligent people and some of the most hardworking people that you will ever meet, of every age range, of every walk of life, like that is where you truly get the experience to advance your career, to learn how to, like when you have to do start a shift, nobody that went to Target, that went to corporate in Minneapolis was doing start a shift, right? Like you have to get up and speak in front of all these people. You're practicing your public speaking and you're practicing, and then empathy, right? You're constantly having to
Empathy.
hire
I was about to
and
throw that out.
fire.
Yep.
But it's you just learn so many intangible skills being in the warehouse and managing people and managing an operation that I like hands down would say that's the best advice.
I would have to agree. I'd have to agree 100%. And I've lived and kind of worked that sort of life cycle as well. It makes you, when you understand when you're sitting in a boardroom and you're making decisions, you can actually reflect back on what does this actually mean down at the ground level, the decisions we're making and what we're talking about here today. Like how feasible is it to turn this workforce and expect them to all do this or to do that or whatnot? It's invaluable. It makes you much better, a much better asset to the company and the team you're on.
Yeah, 100%. And again, like nothing wrong with the corporate jobs, right? It's just all about balance. And
Sure.
I think the right time to take the job on the floor is earliest in your career. So yeah.
Definitely, definitely. Well, this flew by really fast, and I think we could keep on talking. And in fact, when we hit stop here, I've got a couple more things to chat with you about, I think. But hey, it was really great. I think I just saw you chime in on a couple comments somewhere on LinkedIn, kind of noticed your name and saw what you were doing with stock. And I was just like, man, I got to chat with this person. And I'm looking forward to seeing what you do. You've done a lot of cool things, and it seems like you're just going to be a mover and shaker in the industry. And so I'm really happy to have had a chance to chat with you and bring you on the podcast.
Thank you. I really appreciate the time and the exposure and the conversation. I agree. We could probably go on for hours. So I appreciate it.
Cool. All right. Catch you later, Abby.
See ya.